Welcome to KLEAN Radio, the show about addiction and how to overcome it, featuring celebrity and professional interviews with people in recovery and how successful treatment has brought remarkable changes in their lives. With your hosts, Andrew.
I got married for the third time, and the over-under between all my friends was 15 months.
And Judah.
Well, it sounds profound if it doesn't make sense.
I guess so.
That's what I've learned about profoundness.
Break free of those habits that are controlling you. Life is waiting. Come and get it. KLEAN Radio starts now.
Oh, here we are. Welcome to KLEAN Radio. I'm Andrew, and my co-host Judah.
I'm Judah. My mic is hot.
And here we are on our new station. I can't believe it.
Yeah, KFWB 980.
That's right, the second season of KLEAN Radio.
You got it.
Starting with a bang.
Yeah.
On a new station.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot less of a drive than we had out to Anaheim. So
that's right. 1 hour less. Exactly.
Yes, 2 hours if you figure out.
Yeah, I don't get to stop and get my cheat meal, though.
Yes.
Anyway.
We're a show about addiction, and Andrew is addicted to McDonald's.
Junk food. So let's just tell people a little bit about who we are. We're a show about addiction and recovery. We also have a great website.
KLEANradio.com or KLEANtreatmentcenter.com.
Right.
What is KLEAN Treatment Center?
KLEAN Treatment Center is actually the facility that we run, and we do addiction treatment, residential, and we also have an outpatient program for people with problems with drugs and alcohol.
We're in the studio tonight with Alonzo Bowden, winner of The Last Comic Standing. How cool is that? That nobody saw the last episode.
No, nobody saw. No, I was just laughing at what you said about going cold turkey. You know, a good addict goes cold turkey every time he's broke. I didn't intend to go cold turkey, right, but I ran out of money, so I'm on a cold turkey run right now. You know, but that is the reality of it. I mean, that does happen, and obviously I understand what you're saying about the medical aspects of it, but the reality aspects of it is that happens. You go broke. I mean, very few people, I think, want to get sober. Like, you know, people don't come strolling into sobriety.
Right.
Like, you hit a bottom. You got beat down, whether it be financial, emotional, or, you know, or like you were talking about DUIs and getting arrested and stuff like that. Ultimately, that was my bottom, you know, getting arrested. But when you get here, you know, like you get here however you get here. And one of the things about celebrity, because I've been around celebrity, and I used to be around athletes who got into the program, and it's always a mixed blessing, because the good side is you have more help than imaginable. Like, you have people to help you in programs, and there's money, and there's this and that. But the bad side is you're doing it publicly. You don't have that level of anonymity or privacy, and if you screw up, it's a big deal, you know. So there's two sides to the coin. I don't know.
There's a lot of shame around relapse in general. Even, you know, when you become a member of like AA or something, and you have a lot of sober friends, even people that relapse are scared to admit it, and they have this huge fear. Often, not always, but often, because of the shame. You know, there's a lot of shame.
Yeah, and there can be an ego attached to time, and it's not just that. I'll tell you another problem, because I know some people have been sober a long time and have gone out and gotten loaded. There's no new information. In other words, like I've been in this program 23 years, right? So if I got loaded and came back, and I would just be hearing the same thing again, and I might be very dismissive, like, that doesn't work. I heard, and that does happen to people. It's obviously a tough road to do that. But
do you think there were underlying issues involved?
With me?
With your drinking, or was it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think. First of all, if you're a comic, there are deep underlying issues. All right? Forget about
the drinking, right?
Forget about addiction. If you're a comic, there's deep issues involved.
Right? We have Comics Anonymous. That's going to be our thing.
That's a whole other question.
The last thing you want to do is cure us, because we wouldn't be funny.
Is that hard for you?
Wait. Do you think that's true? Do you
Absolutely,
really think that if you get...
the comic has to be a broken toy.
You have to
The comic has to be a broken toy, and maybe not a destructive broken toy,
right?
But definitely a broken toy, because if you're not, then you don't analyze society. You don't analyze life, whether it be like me, where I'm like more of a social commentary, political kind of guy.
It's that perspective, though, right? You have a twisted perspective that nobody else has.
Well, with me, like, I see something and I say it, and people are like, hey, wait a minute, that's right, that's true. Like, I never thought of that, but it's absolutely true. And then you have the people who might look at their own life and be that way, but they still have, you know what I mean? Like, every comic has his own twisted perspective. and you bring people in, and it's great when everyone understands it. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Like, earlier we were listening to a show, they were talking about George Carlin.
Right.
And how many things did George Carlin say about society that people were like,
right. And they were simple things. I mean, he would talk about everyday things, but he would give you a new perspective. It was like the Rubik's Cube of perspective.
He'd also say it was one of the cool things that I guess that you get to do is you say it's okay to talk about this stuff. Because I think comedy brings that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you look at right now, the greatest guy in news right now is Jon Stewart. Because he's the only guy with no agenda.
Right.
He's a comic, which means you don't like either side.
Right.
That's
hopefully.
like we and he will skewer Democrat, Republican, or this, that, like either side of any issue that gets stupid, he will skewer them because he's the comic. The thing I love about being a comic, and the reason I have my jester tattoos, is the jester was the only guy who could make fun of the king. But if it wasn't funny, they chopped off his head. And that's the way I love
Stakes
it that
are
way.
pretty high.
I want the stakes to be that high. It's like, I'm allowed to talk about anything, but if it's not funny, you can kill me. And my agent says no, but it's all right.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
We're in the studio tonight with the edible, Sherry Lewis. And I want to ask you about that. And if you have any questions about what we're talking about, please call in. Excuse me. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was you just brought that up, that AIDS has almost become blah.
Yeah, it's complacent.
Do you believe, I mean, let's, not to get too political here, but do you believe that part of the reason is that they scared the wrong people? When I was a teenager, they were scaring everybody. They scared the straight community.
Who's the they?
The government. To me, every newscast was about the spread. It was getting into.
Well, it was scary. I don't think that was propaganda.
Yeah, nobody knew where it was coming from.
But it didn't necessarily get into certain communities as much as they said it would.
I think a lot of it was covered up.
Well, it did. It's because, and this is where the problem came from. When you're fixing on just a particular group, IV drug users, which was the East Coast,
and the gay community,
and the gay community. Well, then you're missing an entire population, which now the message has been: we all have AIDS, meaning this disease is available to all of us. So, but we missed that because we were so fearful that we only looked at certain risk groups, which we don't say anymore.
Well, I also think people didn't really understand the concept of bisexuality as being really prevalent, and that there'd be transmission from men to women, from the gay community primarily, to straight women, and then again to straight men. And then you mix that with drug and substance abuse and sharing of needles, and then the people that are using needles sleeping with other people.
Or then, in my story, you get clean. You start a new life.
Right. You think you're free and clear.
You meet Mr. Right.
Right.
Well, that's what I was. It's an amazing story. That I'd love for you to share the story about how you found out, not the story you were about to get married.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely healthy. I had no symptoms. I had friends who have died of AIDS, which was terrifying, of course. But if you weren't sick in those days, you just went, well, that's, I'll get one of those tests. And the doctor didn't even want to give me a test because he thought it was a ridiculous request.
Right.
And that just shows how ignorant we were that was the era. And so I asked him for it because I wanted a clean bill of health, getting married, and wanting to get pregnant. And then I was shocked when 3 weeks later, this information was positive. And they had...
Were you sober at the time?
I was sober. I was a year and a half sober.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That part is really still astounds
That
me.
is amazing because you hear I'm sure you constantly, Andrew. I mean, we all hear the excuses why people go out and relapse, and I'm constantly saying to people, well, Eric Clapton managed to stay sober after watching, after seeing his child falling out of its, and it's an amazing thing. You're 1.5 years sober. You're getting on with your life, and you get this at the time, a death sentence.
Everything was like at the height of recovery was great. Right. I met Mr. Right. I had an agent for the first time in New York, so my career is starting up.
You had an Asian?
An Asian. I had an Asian. And everything was perfect.
Right.
And to this day, and I'm sure you understand the psychological trauma of that, to this day, I'm working at don't be afraid to move forward because you really feel like the other shoe is going to drop.
Right.
You really do, like, it's getting so good, I don't know,
Yeah,
and I'm just like
testing
trying
your luck too much, right?
Trying to ignore that now and just going for it anyway. But yeah, it was traumatic, and I really have to say, God bless my Boston peeps. I was in Boston when I was diagnosed, and they circled me, as they continue to do for friends who are sick today, and told me, you're going to be all right. You don't have to use no matter what. A simple, clear message. The program's message doesn't change no matter what the issue is, even though it was absolutely terrifying. And then when the issue of AZT came up, because they had no drugs, they said, well, you want AZT? And I was like, so scary. I like my clean body. I don't want to put this chemical in. And there was so scary about what it would do for you or against you. And I shared that in a meeting, and someone simply said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I knew that was God speaking to me. And I went, thank you very much. And I went and I told this doctor, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm fine. And he said, your health is an illusion, young lady. And I said, well, I just jogged 5 miles today. That's a reality, not an illusion. And that's how I continued to take each step, breathlessly, really. I mean, it was terrifying. Every day I was just grateful. When today it could be your last, you really do live it big.
Let's go on to another call. We got a call on line 3. Michael from San Diego. You're on Clean Radio.
Hey, Michael.
Let me turn my radio off.
Sure.
Hold on.
Or your computer.
Or
The reason I called... Hold on. I guess the reason I called is because I do drink pretty much excessively. Well, I think most people would think it's excessive every day. But I have had periods where I don't drink. And I wanted to put the call out that when I don't drink, it's a much better day.
I can tell you've been drinking tonight, and it's interesting that you called. How long have you been drinking for this period?
I probably drank a fifth of vodka today.
Okay.
But I haven't drank. But the last drink I had was probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow. Michael, clearly you're having a severe problem with alcohol, and we'd like to see you get help. Is that something you'd be interested in doing?
Well, yes. I'm taking, some steps to do that. They have a program here in San Diego called Bridges to Recovery, and I have an appointment tomorrow.
Well, good. I encourage you to try and make that appointment. If you're if you're unable to make that appointment, give us a call. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can go to cleancenter.com, or you can call us at 888-601-6040. We always have treatment professionals that are available to speak to and help you get help no matter what, whether you have resources or not.
Yeah. Michael, do you have insurance?
No, I don't. That's the problem.
Well, you know what? We have scholarships available, and we're able to treat people. Yeah. And we have other professionals both in San Diego and LA. So, you're obviously in the point where you've recognized that you have a problem. You're drinking.
I have a total problem.
Yeah, you're drinking at a point that's really actually very dangerous, and I encourage you to reach out and get some help.
Yeah, I don't drive. So.
Yeah, but Michael.
But it's about you. It's about you, Michael.
Yeah.
Michael, at this point, it's clearly about getting you some help. You can't keep doing what you're doing, and there's so much hope if you can get sober, and there's such a great life for you if you can get through this. And
I know, and I like it much better when I don't.
right? You just got to figure out how to remember that. And I think that's where, the fellowship in AA can be great. You know, meet a lot of people that are sober and have great lives. And
and I've done that. I've been in AA, and I've done that. And I got to be honest with you. I like to drink. I mean, I like it. I like that feeling.
Yeah, well, as my wife says, fat men like to eat cake. You know?
But the problem is, Michael, it doesn't like you.
It doesn't like you, and it's not working for you anymore.
Yeah, right. And Michael, here's the thing, and I often, Michael,
the older I get, and it doesn't. It changes me. Differently than it used to when I was younger.
Michael, it's going to kill you one way or the other.
Right.
I mean, it's great that you don't drive, but you're destroying your liver. The health consequences are going to catch up with you, you could die. There's cardiac arrest.
I sit there and I listen to the radio, and I listen to, and I guess one of the reasons I called in was I wanted to relate to maybe younger people or other people that it's not a good way to go.
Michael, I'm going to put you on hold, and we're going to have someone else talk to you here in the studio. And then hopefully maybe we can have you back on in 30 or 60 or 90 days after hopefully we've gotten you some help. And we can, see what kind of improvements can happen in your life, okay?
What's amazing is that that he's saying this. I used to listen to the radio, too, when I was drinking in New York. And I've often joked about this, especially with you, Andrew, is that my phone number was banned from every talk radio station in New York because I would call these stations so I wouldn't be alone.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
His name is Steve Bluestein, and he was grateful enough to come in here.
Welcome, Steve. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Great. You got to move up a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
And Steve Bluestein is an author. You want to tell us the name of your book?
The name of my book is It's So Hard to Type with a Gun in My Mouth.
And that is a very cool title. What's up with the title? Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's a collection of essays and short stories about my, working on the road, my years of drug use, my getting sober, all those things rolled in. I did stand up for 30 years, and I have all these stories of opening acts. I was the opening act for Barry Manilow and for Donna Summer and Melissa Manchester and people like that. And I have all these stories, and I just figured I should put them in a book before I die.
So you're from New York?
No, I'm from Boston.
Oh, Boston.
Emerson graduate.
Emerson graduate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I know a few of those.
I would have thought you were from New York, too, and that's a compliment.
Also the people he's talking about, Streisand and Barry Manilow, that was the big New York scene, right?
Yeah, but I didn't say Streisand. But,
okay, sorry.
You're hallucinating.
Well, Barry Manilow played piano for Barbra Streisand.
Marilyn Manilow played piano for Bette Midler.
Oh, Bette Midler.
But who am I to point a finger?
You know what?
Can I tell you something?
This is why you're here.
You don't know why I'm so happy that you're in here right now, because Andrew's a very bright guy.
Obviously, I just failed my gay pass.
But
Better take away your gay card.
The other day, I was in the car with him, and I said to him, "You're one of those guys that could just say anything and people believe it because you say it with confidence.
Right.
You sound and it's like either people don't want to confront you about it, or they just don't know.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
Yes. When it comes to that subject.
Do you want to tell us one of the stories in the book? Is there anything you could share with us?
A
little tease for the listeners.
Okay. I was living in New York City, and I had this dog named Crosby.
All right, now we're back in New York?
Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But.
So this is how it's going to be, is it?
Yeah,
So I had graduated from Emerson College in Boston, and
Right.
then I moved to New York City.
Got it.
So I lived in New York for 3 years. Okay. Are you happy now?
Now I'm much happier.
So I had this dog Crosby because I had found him on the Cross Bay Parkway, so I called him Crosby.
That's cool.
And it was the late 60s, late 70s, early 70s, and a friend of mine had given me a big chunk of hash that I left in my apartment, and I wrapped it in tinfoil, put it in a jar, put it in the closet of my one room apartment. The apartment in New York this is not a joke, it was so tiny that if the toilet seat was down, I could not close the bathroom door.
I've been in a hotel room like that in New York.
So I put it in, and I had this dog in this apartment, and so I put it in. I came home one day, and the dog would always greet me, and the dog was not there.
Huh.
So it was a one-room apartment, about as big as this room. Right. So I opened the closet door, and the dog and all my clothes were gone. Right. And I said, "Oh God, I've been robbed." And then I looked down, and all my clothes were on a pile on the floor, and the dog was lying on his back, peeing on himself. And wow. I then had realized that he had knocked the jar off the counter and chewed it, and
wow.
and the dog, and I
ate all the hash.
Yeah, ate all
the
the
dog live?
The dog lived. He was so happy. And I called one of my best friends from college, and I said, "You got to help me. We got to take this dog to the vets." And because I was positive I was going to be arrested on all kinds of charges, animal cruelty and everything. So we brought
only in West Hollywood.
No. So we get to the hospital, and the doctor has this. He's like shoulder length hair and he's like a hippie. Dude, what you do to your dog, man? So the dog was fine, but that was like one of the beginnings of my realizing that this stuff could possibly be not so good to have around the house.
Right. Were you more concerned right away that you had no more hash?
I was not a happy camper.
Because I'd be going through two emotions. If my dog drank my alcohol, I'd be like, no more alcohol. Yeah, right. My dog might die.
Yeah, right. No, no, it was definitely my dog might die. Oh my God, what am I going to do Saturday night? Right. It was like that.
You're listening to the best of KLEAN Radio.
Right for that.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio live on KLEANradio.com, also KFWB News Talk 980 and 760 KFMB. We're in the studio tonight with author Alex Katahakis, author of Erotic Intelligence, and Doug Evans, who hasn't said a word yet but will soon. And he's the executive director of the Center for Healthy Sex, and she's the clinical director of the Center for Healthy Sex. Okay, now we can take a call.
We're going to take a call?
Yes.
All right, let's take the call. We've got Mike from Costa Mesa. Mike, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hi, thank you very much. I was just wondering, listening to you guys' conversation, what kind of an impact do you guys think society would have if, like pot were legalized? It's a little bit off of what you guys were talking about, but I am interested in knowing what you guys' opinion would be on that.
Well, cool. Well, Annie Hall was very into pot and sex.
I'm a weekend warrior myself,
right,
right. So not every weekend, but
explain to people what you mean by that.
What is that?
Weekend warrior.
What a weekend warrior is, Mike?
Oh yeah, like if I got some gardening to do or some work to do or some cleaning up to do or something, it's like I'll just go smoke a little bit and then just start doing it, type of thing. It makes
I've always said with drugs that there's use, abuse, and then addiction. And that's a decision that everybody sort of makes for themselves.
Right.
Pot happens to be semi-quasi legal in California. It's not legal with the DA. Right. The DEA. So you might want to watch that in case you see black helicopters. And if you are seeing black helicopters, you might want to give us a call because you probably smoked too much pot.
And not just that, the potency goes up every year. Compared to how it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
to where it's now.
Less shipping and handling now. Everybody's growing it, and it's being sold.
The big thing I think also though with like pot is that it makes people kind of lazy and stupid generally, I find, and it makes people make bad decisions. And I think when we talk about sex addiction and problems with sex, which is really our topic tonight, we see this a lot where people use drugs and it gets them in compromised sexual behavior. I've seen a lot of clients from the past and where they've ended up with severe sexually transmitted diseases from just one or two occurrences of sexual sort of interaction that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't been using.
Right.
And women getting raped and horrible things. So
there's a lot of addictive interaction between drugs and sex. There are a lot of people that will not have sex with a prostitute unless they have cocaine on board also. So there's a fusion there, and that's true with crystal meth addicts as well.
Crystal meth really changed the landscape in a lot of ways,
yeah,
huh?
It sure did.
Coke sort of made people impotent for the most part, right?
Yeah, right.
So they got to stay up and party, but, nothing was going to happen generally. But meth has really created a whole level of compulsive sex that I've never seen before. I mean, we have a lot of people coming through treatment now where the compulsive masturbation and sex is a huge part of what we're treating.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a super dangerous drug, as you know. I mean, what it does to the brain is not reversible, depending on the amount that people are using. And yeah, there's an absolute activation there neurologically in relation to the pleasure centers of the body. So the kind of sex someone's having with crystal meth is not anything they're ever going to be able to have when they're not high or loaded. Right. And that changes the landscape of sexuality for sure.
Mike, one of the things I think is interesting about your call is that you're sort of what I call the bargaining caller. You know, you're calling up saying, you know, what's wrong with doing a little pot, and, you know, or what's the right amount that's not a problem? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well, no, I mean, I just like you guys' conversation. I like what you guys
Oh, cool. Thank you.
I wonder what your guys' opinion would be on something like that.
We've had shows about that.
Impact? Do you think it'd have a positive impact? I mean, because alcohol is legal, and, I mean, look at the, carnage that causes. What would you guys think if something like this were legalized?
My personal opinion is that we should actually legalize all drugs, but that's, and I'm someone who actually treats drug addicts, and the reason that I really believe in the legalization of all drugs is that I come from more of a public health model on these issues, which means that I believe that the more we control and regulate substances, the easier it is for us to engage in what the effects are with the people that use them, and also what are called externalities, or the secondary effects that people's usage causes in the lives around them and in the society in which we live.
Like having them exposed might actually teach them rather than not just telling them by word, you mean?
Well, if you take away the element of using and the profit motive, and then the glamorization of illegal use, then it just becomes sort of bland. And we've seen where legalization has occurred that actually addiction levels drop over time.
I think what you just said is actually a great point, is that, half of the fun of being an addict, isn't it, like, selling yourself? And
it's, a lot of people are exploring new territory.
Having to do crazy stuff to get the drugs.
Right. That's
takes away that whole fun thing.
Yeah, if all of a sudden it's like really sterile, and then, it's just not as glamorized.
Yeah, so, and it might take away a little bit of that, because there is a certain glamorization. Me being a recovering alcoholic,
doing something
I always say
dangerous
about
and
the
naughty,
drink when I
and,
hold the glass, and I shake the glass, it brings back that euphoria.
Right.
And I think for a lot of drug addicts, there is this certain euphoria, and I've heard, you call it junkie pride, and you hear the way addicts share about their story a lot of times, and you could always tell the ones that aren't going to stay sober. And I hate saying this, but it's true, the ones that still have that euphoric recall. Yeah. With me, there's not one euphoric recall I have. It's like I think about drinking.
Recall.
Right, I have no recall. But when I do, I think about drinking and I think homelessness. Right. I don't have like, I'm going to get drunk tonight and get a date. There's none of that happening. And Mike, we hope we answered your question. Thanks a lot for listening, and give us a call back.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.
Welcome to KLEAN Radio. My name is Andrew Spanswick. I'm here with my co-host Judah Friedman. We're here to talk about addiction recovery issues, and we have a great show tonight. Thank you for listening. Hello, Judah.
Oh, hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
What is treatment?
What is treatment?
That I think, we constantly talk about treatment, and we were discussing this over the weekend.
Yep.
But most people do not know what treatment is.
It's amazing, yeah, that people think it's just, this like AA maybe, or
whatever. No, or celebrity rehab, or the commercials they see on TV with passages.
Well, it's unfortunate, like a lot of the reality TV you see these days, like Intervention, whatever, they don't really show the actual treatment process, and they show the before and the after, and it looks really amazing, but you don't really get an idea of what actually happens. And I think for a lot of people it's scary, the idea of going into treatment. So
is that why you set up your treatment center in the middle of West Hollywood?
Well, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, for so long, treatment centers have been isolated way outside of city centers. I think that stems largely from sort of the history of mental illness and people being institutionalized in state hospitals, which were often well away from the population, not in my backyard kind of thing.
Right.
And even with West Hollywood, when we opened up KLEAN in West Hollywood, we had that sort of same reaction at first from neighbors who didn't want to have drug addicts moving into their neighborhood. So, there's still a lot of fear around mental health and even drug and alcohol.
Well, it's funny because growing up in Brooklyn, I had no idea there was a whole rehab world.
Right.
When I had to go to rehab in New York, I went to upstate New York. It was by Sing Sing Prison.
Mm-hmm.
Very depressing drive on the bus down there or in the car down there. And it was out. It was like 3 hours outside of New York. And basically the second you were out, it was like getting out of jail. You had somebody come and get you, and that was it.
Well, there's been two sort of groups that have always dealt with substance abuse. You've had, the Christian right and the temperance movement and prohibition, and people that saw addiction and drug use and drinking as a sin, and therefore, if you didn't sin, you would be fine.
Right.
And so the idea of treating sin was supposed to be done by religion. And then you had the medical community that just saw addiction as another form of psychiatric illness. And it wasn't really until fairly recently in, the scope of time, probably about the 50s, that the recovery movement of treating addiction as a separate illness really started happening. And probably really didn't gain popularity until, the big book started coming out, and then eventually Betty Ford,
Right.
brought women into the fold.
And the Smither people in New York.
Right. And now you're seeing this fold back into where people are saying, hey, you know what, addiction isn't this isolated, separate sort of illness. It's actually part of both psychiatric and social. And, you get this holistic view of body, mind, and spiritual issues.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. I was reading an interesting article this week about, there are a lot of people that are driving right now listening to us on the internet, listening to us on the East Coast, listening to us all over, that are really struggling, that are going through a really rough time right now. The economy is in the tank. I mean, it's coming up on holiday time. You're looking at your bank account. And I was reading this article about how drinking is really picking up and use of drugs is picking up.
And we just saw it in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Jude and I were in the supermarket just before the show.
Which we do every week.
Yeah, to get our donut and our drink. But anyway, we're in the supermarket, and it's amazing how every end of every aisle has been converted into a little liquor store.
Right.
Like they've brought out the holiday vodka and the holiday rum and...
Well, they've replaced what they do on Halloween with candy.
Right,
with
alcohol.
With alcohol now,
Yeah.
and it's constantly I hear I was in your center on Saturday, and one of the girls was asking, "Do you still think about it?" And I said I don't. I mean, I've been sober over 13 years. I don't, But when I first got sober, I noticed every liquor store. I noticed every alcoholic beverage everywhere. I noticed the prices.
Right.
And it was almost like it was calling my name.
Huh.
And I think as people are struggling right now, they're going through these things. And if you're struggling, it's okay. Give us a call. We could talk about it. There are a lot of different groups out there, whether it's going to therapy or whether it's a bunch of different things.
People don't realize also this is actually the time that a lot of people go into treatment.
Yeah.
The summer, people tend to be away from their family and isolate, and people that are drug addicts and alcoholics tend to isolate and stay away from people that care about them because they're embarrassed and they feel shame. But as they're brought into family situations for holiday parties or, just meeting with a family or whatever, it becomes apparent that there's a problem. So we actually see an upsurge in this time of year of people being, identified by their family members as having a problem. So if that's happening and occurring, we'd love to talk about that on the air as well.
And another thing, I was listening to another radio thing the other night, and some guy was calling up, and he had lost his son to addiction. And he was talking about, it was pretty cool listening to this father talk about the dangers of marijuana, of marijuana, I'm like from the 50s, and ganja, and how it's, it's so potent these days. People think constantly, oh, just legalize marijuana. Marijuana is so potent these days. It's probably up there with most Class C drugs.
Yeah, they just did a study. Dr. Cohn at UCLA just published a study saying that the potency of THC has gone up from 4.1% to over 14% in the last 10 years alone. And it's only going up as the is to continue to cross-pollinate and breed these special strains that have higher and higher levels of THC. And for those people that don't know, THC is the active ingredient in marijuana.
And it's sort of
actually one of them. There's actually several, but it's the main one.
But also he was talking about, I mean, I don't know if this is true. You'd probably know better than I do that they have hormones in them. Because the way they're growing them, obviously, there are certain other things they're putting in there to make these pots so potent that it's got to be dangerous.
You know, the other thing that people just don't realize is that you're actually smoking something unfiltered, and there's a lot of tar. There's a lot more tar in marijuana than there is in cigarette smoke. And then also,
what do they say? One joint is the equivalent to a pack?
Yeah, pretty much. And then people are smoking large amount at one time and then holding it into their lungs, which actually isn't really necessary, believe it or not. Most of the THC is actually absorbed very quickly. And so all they're really doing is holding smoke in the cilia and the bronchial tubes, like the little areas in their lungs. And that actually causes a lot of damage.
Okay. You're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. You're in the studio tonight with Andrew Spanswick, founder and CEO of the KLEAN Treatment Center. That's KLEAN with a K.
Yes.
And me.
And Judah.
Yeah, writer.
The Judah.
The Judah.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's KLEAN with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
Jason from Newport Beach, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I've got a friend that has an opiate addiction, and my question is, I've seen this before with a friend who was addicted to heroin, and they were able to come off of it by dosing down and then going to rehab, and they just put them on other pills. They put them on other pills that they were addicted to, and I wanted to know what kind of hope do I have for my friend who's having to take opiates every day, or else they go into withdrawals, to actually come free of this drug, you know?
Completely sober. Is it Suboxone, or do you know what type of other drug?
I think it's
hydrocodone.
I'm not real familiar with drugs.
Isn't that right?
Myself.
Probably.
But hydrocodone, is that
yeah,
what it is?
it's Vicodin or Norco. Dr. Fong, good question for you.
Yeah, you know, here's the very simple thing. Anyone who gets into treatment can get better. You know, a lot of times people think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm not going to get better. But if you get into treatment, you get the right kind of help, it'll work. For opiates specifically, we have in our toolbox, we have methadone, we have Suboxone, we have naltrexone. And I can tell you right now, if he gets the right treatment, it will save his life. I've been prescribing Suboxone for about 8 to 9 years now, and it's got a very interesting rep on the street. But fundamentally, behind closed doors with doctors that know what they're doing, it saves lives. We don't have anything like that for coke. We don't have anything like that for methamphetamine or marijuana, but we have it for opiate addiction. The way I think about it, opiates, that is a medical emergency. This is no different than a heart attack or a diabetic problem with their sugars. This is someone who needs help right away. Emergency rooms is the best way to go. When you show, hey man, I'm with you, I'm your friend, I'm going to be with you for 24 hours a day until you get medically stable, that's probably the best thing you can do.
And that's the point of most of these drugs, right? It's to stabilize people and then slowly wean them off.
Yeah, well, you know, the way I think about it is a lot of times patients come in and say, Doc, you got to give me this stuff. So, you know, no, I'm not your drug dealer. I'm your doctor. Right. My goal is to give you a medication that will lay the groundwork for you to do recovery. I don't have a magic pill. I don't have anything that will take away all the consequences and disease stuff that you have. But I have stuff that will help you think, help you listen, help you sleep, and kill a little bit of that urge and craving that's just eating you up. I don't have anything that's just going to make you, again, 100% sober. And I think if we did, I think that's just not right.
I think there's anything that's so, I mean, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, anything that's so powerful that you can take a little participation but just take the pill and suddenly be better must be worse for you than the thing that you're taking the pill for in the first place.
I think that's very well said. And I think a lot of times that's why Suboxone gets a very interesting rap out there, because it's a very powerful and potent drug. But again, I've seen it when used correctly, saves lives. When used incorrectly, it makes people drive them away from treatment and recovery and meetings and therapy and all the stuff you need to do to get better.
Well, I think you're also saying there's hope. You know, what you're saying to Jason is that don't give up on your friend. There's hope.
Yeah.
And we've all seen it.
I also feel sometimes that the medical system is kind of set up in a way where the doctors do maintenance medication, and that's the business they're in, like pain practices and stuff, where people go for pain, and then they have a legitimate issue to start, and then they start on opiates, and all of a sudden now they're addicted to opiates, and the legitimate issue is gone, and they are still going back and claiming pain for opiates, which is kind of the situation my friend was in, and now we're a productive citizen, and now they're not so much a productive
Jason, I think you bring up a really interesting topic, and we see this quite a lot, where there actually is an ethical treatment or an ethical duty for doctors to treat people that have chronic pain. Why people sometimes become excessively addicted to opiates above the amount necessary to treat their chronic pain is debatable. And whether or not people should use opiates or not has been debated a lot. What I do know is that legally doctors have a mandate to treat people with chronic pain, and opiates are really the first-line treatment. Right? There's 3 classes of opiates, if I'm correct?
There's actually a lot more, but when I went through medical school, we were told pain is the 5th vital sign. Mm-hmm. If you don't treat pain, you're not doing your job, and you can get sued. On the flip side now, I also received no training on what are the signs of prescribing too many opiates or too much. So much of what, Jason, you're talking about is our own docs. We're not that well equipped to recognize the signs and symptoms of drug addiction and drug dependence. On the flip side, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, there is a minority of doctors out there who overprescribe, who don't follow the letter of the law, and are out there to make a quick buck. And I think that's a real shame. It shows like this that we're trying to get that word out that not all of us are pill mills or quacks, as they say.
But there's also a lot of things that are happening. There's now the drug registry. So people that used to doctor shop and go to 4 or 5 different doctors and get 5 scripts for oxycodone are not going to be able to do that anymore.
That's right. Pharmacists are getting more involved. We have doctors, insurance companies are cutting off people who are getting too many opiates. But it's still a rising problem where last year in 2010 there were more deaths in America from prescription drug overdoses than car accidents. Yeah. First time in our nation's history. Oh. So what I tell our med students is we doctors, we kill more people than cars.
Yeah.
So we got to start thinking about that. Yeah.
It's definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to know is, doctors' businesses, they're businesses. They're there to make money, and they're there to make money ethically by oath. But where's the profit in putting their patients into addiction programs? I know they get reimbursed from medical companies or Medicare or Blue Cross or what have you, but is there a value to doctors to saying, okay, I think this person has gone through the drugs that they need to get them through whatever broken, bones or ailments they've had, and now I find they're addicted, so what program do I have, me being a medical doctor, having, staff of 10 people in my office, what can I do for this person that's going to get them into the road to recovery?
All right.
I don't.
Well, Jason, this is sort of like almost a business question, and I started as a social worker working in psychiatric units, and my first company was with 2 psychiatrists. And the reason that I started a company that actually started and ran psychiatric hospitals was because I felt like the treatment that I could deliver as a social worker with other facilities owned by other groups was inadequate. I wanted to own my own facilities in partnership with physicians so I could create my own treatment protocols. What I found out was that in the early years of running and owning psychiatric hospitals was that a lot of it was driven by reimbursement structures, like you're saying. So And it's a tricky little thing. It's not just what will be paid for, but how it will be paid for. So there's all these regulatory guidelines which actually become clinical mandates of how you have to treat somebody in order to get paid. And that's why largely now I'm in the private pay market. Like I rarely take insurance unless it's part of some other form of payment, because I don't think that being involved in a lot of that regulatory oversight is necessarily a positive thing.
Jason, thank you for the call. It's actually very interesting stuff he brings up.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing we want to remind all our listeners about, we're talking about medicine, we're talking about all these things. There are 12-step groups that are absolutely free, that have worked for many and many years, that co-join with seeing a doctor at the same time.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
If anybody's interested in finding our guest tonight, we're in the studio tonight. Okay. You're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's Klean with a K. We're in the studio with Orna and Matthew Walters. We're going to put up all your information on our website so people like Michelle can actually just get the link. And
We got the caller back.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to line 3. David, you're on the air with KLEAN Radio.
Hey, hi. I got a question. Someone who's new in sobriety, how long should they wait before they get into a relationship?
Great relationship.
The $1 million.
The $1 million. How long do I have to wait?
Hopefully it's not too long.
Well, it's what we like to say is it's always good to practice, and your practice space is the dating space, not the relationship space. And we have a practice or really something that we really encourage people to do, which is what we call date to discover. And the date to discovery process is putting the discovery process on yourself, not on finding your ideal mate. So when you can go out there and start paying attention like a detective and being curious about how you are responding. When you're attracted to somebody, can you speak up about how you're feeling? Or when you are not attracted, is it much easier for you to sort of relax and be yourself? What happens? Because in the dating process can bring up a lot of clues about what your old patterns have been that you'd like to break. And you can start in practice and going on this date to discover process. There's no time that you have to really wait for that. And I know that some, recovery centers say you should wait a certain amount of time. But really, when you start dating in this way, you don't really have to wait because you can take that new sober you out in the world.
I actually like the engagement. I like the idea that, why live in a bubble? How long have you been sober, David?
18 months.
Oh, that you're
18
perfect.
months.
You're golden. But you're both of you are basically saying it's like, don't buy if you don't know how to drive stick, don't buy a Porsche stick. Buy like a Dodge Datsun to learn it on. It's like a starter pistol is what you guys are suggesting.
Is that fair to the other person though? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, as long as you're upfront and honest about what you're doing. If you're not going, dating somebody, making them think you're getting into a relationship with them when really you're just going through the process of figuring out yourself.
But how many, I mean, I always say the great woman lie is that I don't need a relationship. That is the greatest woman lie I've ever heard. And it's like every woman is walking around saying, I don't need a relationship. And basically what they're saying is once you have sex with me, that's you will never want anybody else. And I think it's very hard to be honest. I think even when you're honest, and that goes to the part you can't worry about what other people are thinking. All you can worry about is how honest you are.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to tell you who they are by what they do, right? They can tell you whatever. They can, try to convince you of whatever, but their actions tell you everything about who they are. And when you're stepping up and you're sharing your feelings and you're being authentic and you're telling your truth, and if somebody, doesn't respond well to that, that tells you who they are.
David, do you have anybody in mind?
Oh, no. Last girl was like she had 30 days clean and it just wasn't working out.
That you might want to stay away from. And I always say this to people that I'm sponsoring. It's basically like the reason I don't suggest getting into relationships right away is because it's taking you away from the program. It's taking you away from getting as much help as you could possibly get. I'm saying relationships. I'm not saying dating.
Well, it takes a while just for the brain to rewire.
Right.
So if someone's been actively using alcohol and drugs, often it's about really a year before their chemistry biologically is sort of back to normal.
It's like, why not just go to the psych ward?
Yeah, and it's good to let people have some go to the psych ward. Oh my goodness.
Well, somebody with 30 days is basically like, it's like what, they're one level up in the psych ward?
Yeah,
they've got their shoelaces back.
Wow.
So basically,
David, I've been there.
David, we're saying you should start, and any girl that you even, whether there's a huge spark or not, if you just find her remotely interesting, you should go and ask her on a date. Just start going on dates.
Have fun.
But what about, here's David. He's sober 18 months.
Amazing.
Right? And he's looking for a relationship, someone he can relate to. He's going to be attracted to someone that's only sober 30 days. Right? Because there's probably more there. All the dysfunction of his own addiction
health is attracted to
is
health.
right there, right? And so what about a sober person trying to date someone that isn't sober?
Which is me right now.
But has a healthy relationship with drugs or alcohol, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
These guys have such a great relationship, by the way. Our guests were in the studio tonight with Orna and Matthew Walters. I love how they point to each other, but it's not him pointing ever. It's Orna pointing like this. She's got the pointy finger directing the traffic.
He points. He's more subtle than me.
Yeah. And you guys have a really...
I usually grab her leg. Well, let's use us as an example. I've been sober for 9 years, and Orna she'll have an occasional drink. She'll, she has a healthy relationship with alcohol, and
he doesn't let her come home those nights. No, just joking. No kissing on those nights. No,
she's a cheap date. One drink and she's drunk. So,
it's true.
It's true.
9 years later, they're married.
So it really is about your comfort level. I mean, if it's somebody who's going out and drinking on a nightly basis and they, quote unquote, have a healthy relationship with alcohol, it's probably not a good idea, right? But if it's somebody who likes to have a glass of wine now and then with dinner, I think there's a way you can work through it. It depends on how comfortable you are with where you're at.
And I think
what
you were talking about is about, like, what is David about, right? What is David's story for himself? What is it that he, David, what are you looking for in a relationship?
Just a relationship. I've been loaded all my life and just used to have hostages, but now I want someone long term. But trial and error. I've been having problems.
Are you enjoying yourself, David? That's the most important thing, I think, too. Is, are you having fun?
Not really. I mean, it starts out okay, but then I can't cope with it. It's not working out.
I think a lot of the fear is loneliness. I mean, many people that I see that have problems with alcohol and drugs, not only is the process of their addiction led to isolation and loneliness, but they have a deep-seated fear of being alone. They don't want to be alone. They want that relationship, and they're desperate for it, and they're looking for it. And that's why the fellowship of AA and other things is so attractive to so many people that are addicts. How does, is there really like a lid for every pot? Is there hope for people to get a relationship?
I love their smiles. They're just like these, like you two are like, you guys should be like brought around everywhere. You can be like, is there a reason for living today? Them two shaking their heads like, of course.
Definitely.
But how does David know that, he can, how long can he go without having a relationship or beginning to have a relationship and still feel a sense of hope that he can have a relationship?
Well, I think what David, what you need to do is you need to start thinking about what do you really want that relationship to look like. Instead of just going, wow, I want to be with somebody because I'm alone and I'm feeling lonely and I need companionship. It's like, no. What in a bigger picture? How do you want to be in the world? How do you want to be with that woman? How do you want to be in relationship? What do you want her to be like with you? And then, when people don't live up to that, move on.
David, can I ask you a question? Do you have insurance? I'm curious about this. Do you have health insurance or anything like that?
No, not right now.
Okay. The second, because you guys are great. Somebody like David could really use. Do you guys give seminars? How could David? Because David obviously wants help. How do we get him that help?
Well, there's a number of different ways to work with us. We do private coaching, and we have a book. It's not perfect for David because it's geared towards women, but we have a product called Your Soulmate Blueprint, which actually looks at what the pattern has been, and then you move towards bringing in your beloved. And I think where Matthew was going is great for David. Start really looking at how you want the relationship to function. And don't look from what you believe is possible. See, this is the mistake we all make. We all sort of taught like, oh, be reasonable. And I'm telling you to be unreasonable. Like literally draw up, write it out. Like how does the relationship function? What do you do on the weekends? What do you do during the week? How many times a year do you travel? What does she do? What do you do? What does your life look like with this other partner? And I mean, throw in everything. What is that big vision that you really want to create? Now take that vision and start this date to discover process, and you can start weeding out people right away, because if they don't start matching into some of those core things that were in your vision, they're not the right person. And yes, there is a lid for every pot. Absolutely.
I like how you put the food analogy.
Of course. I got to go on a diet
David,
on
thank
Monday,
you so much for calling us.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
So we got to wrap up.
This is a great, amazing show. Do we not get to somebody?
Yeah, there's a couple calls where we have, our long-term fan.
Yeah.
We can throw him in there real quick.
Sonny, you got 30 seconds.
All right, Sonny, you got 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, one quick thing, and I'll take it off the air. Could somebody get addiction off of Alpha online, and if so, how?
Addiction.
Yes, Sonny.
Yeah.
That is a great question.
It's a process addiction.
Sonny is one of
Sonny's our long-term fan. He calls in every show, waits
Sonny,
for half an hour.
I promise you next week we're going to get back to you. We're going to be on in San Diego next week, Sonny, on 760, so it'll be easier for you to listen on the radio.
As well as 980.
As well as 980.
You guys just got on KFWB. What the heck happened?
No, we're going to be on both.
No, we're going to be on both.
Oh, well, that's really weird. I have never heard of that.
The show is growing.
What do you mean, Sonny? You listen to ESPN radio all the time. They're on 100 different stations, Sonny, and I always hear you on it.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
You're listening to KLEAN Radio Live. You could find us, like I said, at KLEANradio.com. And anybody that's going through any sort of issue, it's Sunday night. It's almost 9 o'clock. This is one of the hardest times for anybody that's struggling with alcoholism, with addiction. It's Sunday night, almost 9 o'clock. You got to face Monday. And anybody out there that's going through a rough time, it's going to be okay. And that's all I wanted to hear when I was out there drinking and using, and drinking, was that I wanted to know that it was going to be okay. So if anybody out there, if your son, your daughter, you is struggling with something, it's going to get better, but you got to do the one thing that's the most important, is get out there and try to get help. You could call us at KLEAN. You could call programs like Al-Anon. You could call programs like Rational Recovery. I encourage you to call the place I got sober, which is the 12 Steps, or Tim got sober, which is Rational Recovery.
This is the best of KLEAN Radio, heard every Sunday night at 8. For more on the show, go to KLEANradio.com. That's Klean with a K. If you or someone you know is in need of immediate addiction assistance, call 888-601-6040.
Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs? Call KLEAN Treatment Center at 888-601-6040 for a free drug test and consultation. A treatment advisor is available to help you administer the test and answer any questions you may have regarding treatment and more. We are here to help. Call us today at 888-601-6040 or find us online at cleantreatmentcenter.com for your free drug test and the start of a promising future.